So, again, welcome everybody. Tonight's professional development seminar is going to focus specifically on the concept of an artist project and how to develop one. In all, I guess, fairness or truth, we're going to spend a significant amount of time on the budget, how to budget for one, how to think about, the various elements of a budget that you should likely be considering when you create a project. There is going to be some math involved today, but I tried to make it as simple as possible, not to scare any of you that are, not exactly fans of math. But as we go forward, yeah, I'm trying not to scare you, Navor. It's okay. It's a template. So today's session will hopefully go fairly smoothly. Before we move on, I do want to do a quick little review of what we covered during last session's professional development seminar last month's. And if you remember, we talked a lot about the mindset of an artist as business owner. It really does begin with how you think about yourself as an artist and business owner, because you are ultimately one in the same. And, some of the main points that we talked about last time included just remembering that you are creating a brand and your name is your brand. So you want to make sure that you treat it with respect. And, you can use either your actual name or you can use an artist name. Pen names are fairly common in the literary world, especially. But, there's definitely, I think, value and understanding that your name as a brand is something that is important when you are thinking of your work in terms of a business. It's also very good to produce at your best at any given moment and also continue to grow as an artist. Really, what that means is to not treat this like a hobby or a side hustle, even if you are just getting started. It's important to really invest in yourself and your craft. You can do that in a lot of different ways by either attending workshops. You can find it also through, um, you know, the YouTube universe, right? There's people that joke about YouTube being YouTube University, and that's partly because there are a lot of different ways in which you can learn and expand on your craft. It's also really valuable to finish projects and be consistent, constantly be creating. Um, you'll find that the more you create, the more you polish your craft and the more experience you gain. And in that way, you can really begin to assign a larger value to your work. Because as you assign value to your work, you want to always think about how much time you spend completing it, as well as the experience that you have completing projects. All of those things really do, add value to your work as you grow in your capacity as a business owner. Your skills and your investments are also very, very important and should be reflected in the way that you assign value to your work, too. Plus, one of the things that we will be covering a lot today, um, you know, how much you spend on equipment and supplies. Those expenditures are important. They are the reason why you're able to continue producing. And for that reason, you want to make sure that you maintain records and create a budget, which again, it's part of the math thing that we'll be talking about a little bit later. But yeah, that's one of the big things that you should be always have in mind now, in the early parts of your careers as working artists. And again, the last couple of things that we talked about last time included, promoting yourself and your work, right? Have a website and be prepared to create a website if you do not have one now. Also, engage in social media. Know that it is a tool that you can use to promote yourself and your work. And you should also potentially invest in physical marketing materials, things like business cards, flyers, posters. They can sometimes be things that will get you business, get you an audience, get you followers, without you having to try too much. Physical media still has a place in this world. And proactively plan. Specifically, we talked about, the need for a business plan during the last session, and it's a great great use of your time. Formally develop a business plan that answers some of these questions that we see here. Regularly revisit that business plan and ask yourself, what are you good at and how does that give you an advantage? You do have a unique sense of who you are, what your place is in this world. And as an artist, that is the thing that no other person can give us, right? That is your unique advantage. But there are other things. Each one of you has particular life experiences, skills, things that you bring to the table that other people may not. And in that way, you might be meeting the needs of another audience that, say someone like me can't meet, right? Those are all advantages that each one of you have. So always consider who is your audience, what do they need, and how can you best serve them? And when you think about that, also think about what is it that you just simply love to do and what will keep you motivated. Burnout is real, people. And, taking time to really contemplate the things that make you happy, the things that will keep you motivated in your creative process, those things will help you a lot. And, all of that stuff being formalized in a business plan is going to benefit you in the long term. Does anyone have any other things that maybe I kind of skipped or that they remember that particularly stood out to them during last time's professional development seminar? Moving on, let's talk about this quote. This quote comes from Christina Halverson, and it comes specifically from her book, Content Strategy for the Web. Halverson is an American writer, entrepreneur, speaker, podcaster, and expert on the subject of content strategy. She is the founder and CEO of Brain Traffic. Can I get a volunteer to read the quote for us? Let's see, how about you, Miss Susie? I see you.
Okay, quality relevant content can't be spotted by an algorithm. You can't subscribe to it. You need people, actual human beings, to create or curate it.
Excellent. Thank you, Miss Susie. I appreciate
Mhm.
that. That is until robots take over, according to Abraham. But really, speaking kind of a little bit more seriously or more reflectively, what does this quote make you think? Does it ring true? Do you believe what Halverson is telling us here? Do you agree or disagree? And why?
Oh,
Hmm.
I'm thinking because you quality relevant content can't be spotted by an algorithm. I think it's an issue of the algorithm does not makes the choices by all the data. It leaves you or it leaves that the algorithm is empty of creating. It's just a mathematical algorithm that puts it together,
Hmm.
but yet the creative quality of the brain reacting to things really can't be explained in a relevant content because the algorithm doesn't know what that is. It's just responding to things, you know?
Hmm.
I mean, that's what I think.
Yeah, I like that. It's like saying the algorithm is reactive. It's not proactive, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So there's no exchange. There's no brain exchange, no interfacing with each other, really.
Hmm.
And if anybody's really interested, one of the things is I've really found a lot of goodness out of Noam Chomsky's work, and he has a particular book that focuses in on AI, and it's a really powerful piece.
Interesting. Yeah. We obviously live in a time period where AI is becoming more and more powerful, and it is changing the way in which people interact with the arts. And Jamie in the chat added, I agree with this because you need a human touch to any given content so that people will feel invested in it. And I think that's true. We need to have a reason to connect with something. And the reason to connect with it shouldn't be because of the algorithm. An algorithm, as Ms. Susie pointed out, is reactive. And, just because something gets viewed multiple times doesn't necessarily make it quality or relevant to you.
Right.
Abraham?
Well, I think again, going back to the AI situation that we are living through, this age that we thought we'd never get to.
Hmm.
AI still has a lot of problems identifying what reality is because it's just things that they've been putting in the code, right? Like they don't have the actual experience and culture that a human have. They just have all these sources, but it still is not living a human life. It doesn't have lungs. It doesn't have ears. It doesn't have a heart. So it fits only through the ways that a human who puts the information wants it to get the data. But we as a person, we tend to have all these sensors or senses that are helping us guide us and absorb all this information. Also, we have this community. We don't just live in a single bubble. And that's what we have the experience that others can relate to. And by being related to, we understand more what you're trying to say, how you're feeling, what you're selling, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. Eric in the chat added, quality is subjective and collected and prized by people who make it valuable. An algorithm can't do that unless they're bots, um, or fake subscriptions or likes, or they buy fake subscriptions or likes. And Jamie added, an algorithm is a tool that creators can try to cater to put more eyes on their content for sure, but it doesn't technically create any content by itself.
Right.
If a person doesn't want to click or interact with any content pushed by the algorithm, they simply will not do it. And yeah, I think that that's right, and all of that does tie into the fact that, we have a community, and each one of you, kind of like Abraham was saying, has the ability to speak to a community. Community is very important. And that's, I think, where the relevance kind of comes in. You know, um, when we were talking about the artist as a business owner, I mentioned it, I think, multiple times, and I mentioned it just now. It's about a mindset, right? We need to have a mindset that allows us to think about our community and our audience as, in some ways, partners in the creation of our work, but also that we as individuals have this unique thing that we can present to the world that no one else can, right? And that is, I think, the important thing to remember. You need actual human beings to create or curate the content that other people are consuming. So, having all of these things in mind, I think it's really valuable for us to ask ourselves, well, what is an artist project? If we're going to talk about artist project development, we need to kind of define what an artist project is. So, based on all of your experiences in the group, how would you define an artist project? What can that be? What can that look like? And all of you are kind of doing it now, right? With the work that we do here in the mentorship program. Right. It could be a chapbook. What other things could it be in addition to a chapbook, a poetry book, or the like? Right. Thank you, Erica. It can be an art exhibition. It can be a mural. What else could an artist project be? A play. It could be a band, right? It could be artwork focusing on a historical event. Yeah. Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that could fall under this category. Carolyn wrote, an artist project is something that is a personal story shown in different mediums. Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a very eloquent way of putting it, right? It's your personal story or a personal story. It doesn't necessarily have to be yours. It could be the story of someone else as told by you. And that's, I think, also very important to remember. It could be something that is about other people, but as told by you. right? It's your perspective, your take on these things. That's what makes it the artistic project that it is. And, there's other ways to define it for the purposes of our session for today. We have a short answer. It's a deliverable product or service for a particular audience. And if we were to expand on that and really kind of, explore the concept of an artist project and how to develop one, we would really need to define it a little bit better. So the long answer is an artist project is a well planned undertaking that meets clearly defined goals before, during, and after the project is executed. Not only are we talking about something that you deliver, but it's something that you plan. You do want to put in effort planning before, you do want to put in effort, planning during the execution of it. And you can't forget about how you're going to learn from it afterwards, right? That's all part of the planning process. And we're going to break down each one of these as we go. We have a lot of different ways and examples by which we can do so. But again, an artist project can take on many forms. It's not just the things that we see here, but it does include things like publications. In the chat, we've had chapbooks and books and zines. There's also catalogs and newspapers. Those can fall under the category of an artist project. Art shows, exhibits, performances, installations. But it's also really good to think of even things like digital experiences, right? Those are kind of new in the world. Um, but they're also artist projects. They can include things like virtual reality or augmented reality. They can include podcasts or videos, other forms of digital storytelling. And artist projects can also fall under the category of teaching or community engagements, like murals, or like a workshop or lecture, or even field work, where you're going out and you're interviewing people, you're getting data from different sources. All of that can fall under the artist project, title. And there's, like I said, essentially three phases that at minimum you will likely take on as you're developing your artist project. Really, it's about just ensuring successful completion. Because again, thinking back to the mindset discussion, you want to consistently finish projects. You can start projects, but really consistently finish them so that people will look at you and say, that is a committed artist. That is a artist that is working every day to complete some kind of project. Because in the end, that is how really people kind of measure our quote unquote success, right? Success is relative, but the more you complete projects, the more you build a brand and the more you gain experience points, right? In this game of life. Now, the three things that we'll be talking about tonight include defining your project goals, establish your assets and your needs, and then, of course, evaluation. The first one, define the project goals. This one kind of is reminiscent to the business plan conversation from last month. When we were talking about the business plan, we were talking about things like mission statements, and the vision that you have for a project or for your particular business as an artist. In this particular instance, when you kind of drill down to the project, and you start defining the project goals, it's always good to begin with either the theme or the purpose of the project, right? One way to think about it is as a mission, of the specific project. And really, it should be something that is short and easy to articulate. It could be something that you say in 1 to 2 sentences. This goes kind of to the elevator pitch concept, right? If a person asks you, what are you up to these days? You should be able to tell them within 1 to 2 sentences what you're up to, right? What project you are working on at this time. Obviously, that also means understanding how you will present your project. So, asking yourself early on, is this a publication? If it is, what format will it take? Book, zine, newspaper, etc. If it's an art show, What kind of space are you presenting it in? Is it going to be a pop-up art show? Is it going to be an outdoors art show? Something where you know, put it up on a wall, or maybe you're going to do it in LACMA. A guy sold a huge boulder at LACMA. Exactly. Anything can be an art project.
Yeah, have you seen that project?
I haven't
This
seen.
massive boulder that you go under it. But
Oh.
just to tell the people who are buying your project, or basically the people who's giving you the money, you have to tell them,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm getting this huge boulder and transporting it and breaking down like power lines and spending so much money to bring it here." Convince that people to give you millions. Wow, that's that's talent.
That is talent. And it is sometimes about marketing, as Jamie says. And that in itself can be part of a project, or it can be a project. It's a marketing project, right? And in that way, it could transcend a lot of different types of mediums. If it's a digital presentation, also keep in mind, right? What platform will you use? Is it going to be up on YouTube? Is it going to be maybe something that lives as a collection of reels on Instagram? Is it going to be maybe a virtual reality experience that can only be viewed with virtual reality goggles, right? Those are all things to keep in mind very early on in your planning process. And yeah, as Carolyn says, with great marketing, you can, in fact, sell anything. Because again, it's about the story, right? It's about the personal story that is associated with that. Even a banana taped on a wall can be sold if it tells a story. um, Other questions to ask yourself early on in the process, is who will this project inspire or speak to, right? Again, know your audience, define your primary audience. Who are you making this for besides yourself? Always do work that inspires you, that motivates you. You are the one obviously telling the stories. But there's going to be other people. And if you can define who that audience will be, it'll actually help you a lot in the planning process. Especially if you're going to ask yourself, how or to what degree are they going to be participating in the production of it? The selling of a boulder, I can almost guarantee you, was pitched as a community-based project that involved and empowered, other community members through the removal of power lines and through the very specific placement of the boulder in a walkway, or something like that. So those are ways in which you can start thinking early on about how your projects are going to impact the community, and again, to what degree are they going to be involved in helping you make it. The more you involve other people, the more complicated it could get, but the more fun it could be too. There's always some element to the planning that you can, make fun for yourself. Also, set realistic deadlines, right? Be real about your time. Time is a valuable resource. Your, efforts themselves are valuable resources. So really, be realistic upfront about your timeline for completion. When will you be able to present your work? And if it helps, work backwards from the culmination date. That's how I tend to do my own goal setting. I work backwards from when I want something completed, and then I make myself some benchmarks. That's part of the reason why early on for all of you in the program, we created that template that all of you used to pitch your stories to us, your chapbook ideas. We wanted to give you the tools early on to be able to work backwards from ultimately your due date of the end of June 2025 for the completion of your chapbooks. So early on, invest in the planning phase, the pre-planning phase. Now, this is where it's going to become a little bit more labor intensive, in the sense of, how you're going to do your research. But it's really, really valuable to, at the very beginning, establish what assets you have and what your needs are. Again, There are certain types of resources that are available to you. And the three most common ones that we can think of are time, people, and obviously money, finances, right? And your budget should reflect all of these in some way when you create a budget. You can also begin by asking these questions to establish what assets you have. Where does your project fit into the current environment? Are there other people that are doing similar work as you are? Does that mean if there are other people, is that an opportunity for you to partner or collaborate with others, right? A shared workload is usually a lot easier to get finished to accomplish, your tasks, versus trying to do it all on your own, right? Don't be afraid of partnerships. Don't be afraid of collaborations. That said, are you also in a position where you are ready to use contracts and memorandum of understanding with partners? Those two things are very, very important. And to kind of explain to you why, here's a little quick rundown of each one of them. A contract is going to, well, ultimately, both of them are going to be used as tools to help you for legal purposes because artwork is a property. It's a intellectual property. And a contract in particular will outline terms for licensed intellectual property use. That's just very fancy speak for saying who actually owns the artwork that's being created. And a contract will also establish for you the use case scenarios and for how long you can use the artwork. That's very common in music, and I'm sure Carolyn has a good lawyer that can help break some of these things down. But really, the reason why you want to use contracts with other artists is because it's going to ultimately establish the financial benefits between the collaborators, right? Are you going to make a profit off of sales, and are you going to share those profits? Or are you going to split it by, using the royalties system? The person that you collaborate with maybe gets X percent, as a royalty for you getting the full profits up front, right? Those are the kinds of details that contracts will help you outline. A memorandum of understanding is more like an agreement with multiple people, two or more. And this is usually something that you would want to use if you're, say, going to be renting a space, right? Let's say your artist project involves some sort of performance dance thing, right? And that particular situation could be the type of situation where maybe you have your own performance and another person also has a performance on the same day or during the same week. And in those situations, you may be doing your own independent thing, but the memorandum of understanding can at least help cover the cost of rental, for the space, and for maybe other lighting and chairs and sound equipment. It can be for even just something as simple as utilities and having like a studio space that you're working in. That's where a memorandum of understanding can benefit you because you're at least able to say, okay, I pay X amount, you pay X amount. And, in the event of an emergency, we uh, agree to spend X amount of money on, say, a plumber, right? So that's where a memorandum of understanding can help you. And we'll kind of talk about this a little bit more in a future session, but this is good for you to be aware of, at least at this time. Now, going back to establishing your assets and needs, are there a variety of resources that are available to you? Think of things like support networks, right? Are you a part of writer circles if you're a writer? Are you part of an editors group? Do you attend community based workshops where you can maybe get feedback on some of the artwork that you're creating at this time that is part of a larger project? If it's free, great. If not, is that an asset that you can maybe pay for now and maybe reap the profits off of it later? Those are things to consider. There are obviously a lot of free resources out there, especially when you are talking about, just simply collaborating with friends and other artists that you admire. Sometimes you can do things for each other in just a simple manner, like critiquing each other's work and helping each other expand your technique set for the development of of a particular project. And then, of course, there's cash, right? How much funding do you have up front to get started? Are there other related jobs that maybe can help fund your project while you're working on it? There's also grants and fellowships that you could apply to. Potentially, that could be a way for you to get the funding you need to make a project complete. Also, are there discounts that you can take advantage of? Are you part of a trade organization that gives you a discount on, say, printing? Are there maybe in-kind services that you can take advantage of? Will you be maybe working in a community environment where you can maybe use a library's community room for free to meet with other people and, encourage them to participate in the project? Right? Those are all different ways that you can assess what assets you have and what areas you can maybe plug in another resource. And again, remember, does your budget reflect the full cost of production? And when I say full cost, I really do mean time. How much time are you going to be investing in this project? What startup costs do you require in order to get, some of the main elements that you need to get a project going? Again, the available assets, those are always good to include in a budget. Other costs like production and presentation, and of course, evaluation. Those are all things that you should be reflecting in a budget that you create. Any questions so far? I know it's going to get very exciting in a moment here, but one last thing that I want to remind you all, if budgeting is something that kind of scares you, just remember that a budget is a moral document. Right? This is one of the pieces of advice that I got. I can't even remember how long ago now at this point, but it was one of the things that really helped me understand why budgeting is so important, especially when you start to value not just your time, but the time of others, right? The amount of money that you spend on something means that you're placing a particular value on it. And if you value the time and efforts of another person, that in itself makes it a moral document, right? If you value yourself and you value your efforts, that is making a budget a moral document because it's about, ultimately your self care, right? We do unfortunately live in a society where we place a lot of value on, outputs and metrics that sometimes reflect who we are, sometimes they don't. But if you are, in fact, investing in yourself and your skill set, those are things that are going to pay off in the long run. They're going to make you happier. And again, time and those investments in yourself really do matter. And they are ultimately what make a budget a moral document. So remember that, take it to heart, and don't forget to pay yourselves, right? In time, in, physical cash, right? Like in actual money, pay yourselves. That's always going to help. Now, again, this is maybe not the most exciting thing to cover, when it comes to budgeting and like, creating artist projects as we call them, but I did create for all of you a handout that is essentially a template. Now, the thing about this template is that it does involve some Excel magic. It's right now here presented on the screen in Google Sheets, which is Google's version of Excel. But when I shared this earlier on Google Classroom for all of you, I shared it as an Excel spreadsheet. That hopefully will mean that you can all open it, without any problems. You can obviously open it within Google Sheets as a spreadsheet. If you have Microsoft Excel, you can open it on Excel. And if you have what's it called? Numbers on Apple devices, Numbers should also be able to open that document. And each one of you can, replicate it, you can modify it. But if you notice up in the little toolbar up here, some of these cells do have functions already uh, put in them. So when you make changes to the areas where you just see a number, those changes will automatically be reflected in the areas with formulas. So as an example, let's say, living here in LA, you know that at minimum you want to make $25 an hour because that feels like a comfortable amount of money to be making as your hourly wage. You can put right here $25 an hour under the hourly wage equivalent. And if you are going to start planning for your career as an artist to be, maybe your regular 40-hour a week full-time job, here under weekly hours worked equivalent, you can actually type in the number 40 and voila, this automatically updates for you. I hope that's easy enough to read. Let me try and make this a little bit bigger. So again, there are certain fields here that you will see when you go to them. They have formulas already baked into it, but you can, go in and make adjustments as you see fit, especially if it's a cell that has an actual number in it, like a solid number, which you'll always be able to tell by, clicking on it and then looking up at the toolbar where it shows you the what is in that cell, right? Now, let's say you have certain medical conditions and you know you need insurance, then on this field, you can add in, how much you anticipate spending a year on insurance. For the case of this one, let's just assume that you're spending $500 a month on insurance, which I believe translates to $6,000 over the 12 months, right? So here, again, it shows you the monthly cost breakdown and then a weekly cost breakdown automatically. So you can play with this and figure out what you want to do for yourself. Just kind of understand that things like Social Security, you do have to pay Social Security if you're an independent artist or if you're working for someone else. All of these other things are, again, already pre-baked in here and they will auto calculate for you based on the most current rates. In the future, you may need to update that, but generally speaking, this is how much you would be needing to set aside. And the reason why that's important is because in the end, as an artist, this would be your wage for the year if you're working 40 hours a week at $25 an hour. Right. So that's a good baseline for us to start with. And as we go down in this spreadsheet that I created for you, you'll see that there's other things like you could hire an assistant. You can put how much money you want to pay your assistant. Let's say it's $20 an hour, the new minimum wage. And they're going to be working for you maybe 15 hours a week. Again, that's automatically there. Um, you can leave that at zero for now if you know that in the future that's not going to be part of your particular business plan. But you do have the flexibility to add that there. And then going down, we have things like independent contractors, so people that you might pay to do a specific service for any kind of project, like say a teaching artist that is collaborating with you. Maybe this is for a build out of an office space that you need to have completed. All of that stuff is there for you. And again, if it's blank, you can type in a number. Here, once you are done making your changes or your modifications for the different people that you would be hiring, this again will automatically update for you, and that'll show you your total staff only costs. Then there's things like your operational overhead. These are really important for you to start thinking about now. This includes things like rent. If you're going to be renting an office space or a studio space, you definitely should have a budget for that. And also, if you anticipate this being a career that you really go long term in and you don't want to necessarily rent an office space, you can still, as part of your taxes, you know, um, do the tax deduction thing where you get a percentage of either your rent or your home's mortgage waived or given to you as a credit on your taxes, because you're using it for your business. So, depending on what that might be, like let's say it's 50% of your rent because you're using half of your home where you live as a studio space for your artwork. Um, I don't know, maybe that would be something equivalent to, like, let's say just conservatively $750. And again, that's not this column here is annual, and the monthly is where the what's it called, the formula lives. So whatever 750 a month is, multiply that by 12, and then that's how you'll get that there. For the sake again of easiness, let's stick with $500 a month. So that would be about $6,000 a year. There's other fields here like insurance, general liability insurance. I can tell you now, if you apply to grants, especially grants through the city, or if you're applying for contracts with the city or the county, they do require that you have general liability insurance. I left this at $2,000 a year because that's approximately how much DSTL Arts pays for general liability insurance. And that's for us to be able to do events, also workshops, and other types of activities that are arts based, in multiple venues. So that's kind of like a catch-all amount for this particular use. But in your case, if you're only doing maybe a short-term workshop, you may not have to spend as much money there. If you have volunteers, sometimes it's good to invest in volunteer insurance. There's also going to be other things like permitting and special events insurance that you may need. So all of these things are already pre-populated there. But because you can customize this to your own needs, you can always change the titles that you see here for each category. If you want to pay somebody to, come and help you do cleaning, you can add that here. In terms of utilities, if you're going to be itemizing your utilities costs, things like the internet service that you have in your home, or if you're going to install a phone and separate internet service in a studio or office, those are things that you should definitely add here. And then, of course, office supplies. You have to have pens, paper, printer, inks. Those kinds of things would be good things to have here. And I do generally recommend save a little bit of money and have a fund for replacing tech. Things get updated all the time. Things do break down, especially if they're used often. A good computer can last you up to 10 years. So if you're saving a little bit every year for the possibility of upgrading, that's always something that's really good to have, kind of like as a rainy day fund. And again, professional development. Really do be honest about how often you're using other people's services to develop your own skills. It may be free, it may cost you something, but add that as a line item in a budget because again, your time, your experience, all of those things are investments in yourself. And it's worth it to put that into a budget now. There's also travel and gas mileage. You can also do parking, like if you pay for parking, as a potential itemized deduction on your taxes, and you may as well build that into a budget. You may also end up finding that you need to pay for postage and shipping for certain things, especially if you're shipping larger items. And if you don't want to use your home address as your business's address, then you would probably want to rent a PO box. So those are all listed there. And then here we have legal and publishing fees. So things like licensing fees. If you're going to be using the artwork of others, build that into a budget. If you're going to be consulting with a lawyer, build that into your budget. If you're going to be copywriting your work and actually spending the money to send it to the Office of Copyright, the US Copyright Office, you build that into your budget. If you're going to be using things like QuickBooks, to help you with tracking your expenses, build that into your budget. Ultimately, all of these little things here are things that I know personally. Um, I have done for myself as an independent artist, and also things that I have ultimately paid to get support with for Distill Arts. So a lot of the things that are listed here in this particular template are real things that honestly a lot of working artists use now. And they're just great ways for you to keep in mind, all the expenses that do come with ultimately operating as a business owner, right? So, um, yeah, snacks, put it into your budget. Absolutely, Abraham. That is bit that and back when we were doing Conchas y Cafe, for example, in person, I built that into our budget. Not all grants will cover the cost of snacks and things like that, but some grants do. And really we did it with our donations. So individual donations helped pay for the snacks for Conchas y Cafe. And remember, I said it earlier, right? Invest in marketing materials. That includes paying for an official website domain. And, some of the best website services that I have found, especially if you really are planning on using the website for a long time, a lot of them, this is the average amount that I have found for not only the domain, but also the hosting. Web hosting fees can be a lot more expensive than just simply registering a domain. But some of the best websites or web services are about $500 a year. So that's why I put $499 there. You may be able to find some that are a little bit cheaper if you go the with just the web hosting service, and then you do all of the design work yourself in, like, say, Adobe Dreamweaver or other web building apps that exist in the world. Again, business cards, flyers, social media promotion. You can always pay for boosted posts if it works for your particular needs. I also recommend that you consider under marketing needs, dues for joining certain types of festivals, art shows, festivals, trade shows, those kinds of things. Again, build that into your budget. And just like with any event, you're probably going to need some supplies like tables, chairs, um, table covers, on awning or a little pop-up tent. Those kinds of things are things that you should build into a budget as well. And then if you use a vehicle as part of your programs and services, you should also build that into your budget. How much does it cost to finance it? How much does it cost to lease it? Insurance. Don't forget, every car has to have auto insurance in the state of California. Every year you have to pay the registration. There's parking and toll fees again. Car washes, if you just run it through a sprinkler, that's still using up water, and you still got to buy the soap for it. So all of those things again, build them into your budget. There's also the possibility of in-kind donations. So, like I mentioned before, you have the ability here to add volunteers if volunteers are working with you. Specialized volunteers can actually be worth technically more money, in the sense of their skill sets. If they're specialized, they can be kind of tracked at a higher rate. Like, say, a volunteer accountant, they can be tracked at a rate that's equivalent to about $65 an hour. So if they're volunteering an hour, that's $65 that it has been technically donated to you as an artist. The same goes for venues. There's certain venues like the LA Public Library or the LA County Library that do offer the use of their community room as long as you're not charging for your workshops. So if your part of your artist project involves doing community-based events and you're doing them for free for the community, you can potentially go to venues like that and get what would be the equivalent of up to $250 in a free rental space. And then when we continue down here under programming costs, you'll notice here in the field that shows you the formulas, there is a formula. So with these two sections, the printing costs, the uh, program supplies, those they're actually linked to the other sheets that are part of this particular spreadsheet. And then the venue rental, if you anticipate having to spend money on a venue, like say a big salon for a dance, you can add that here. And all of that will then total up together to give you a full annual budget. And when you break it down, I don't know if you remember, but we started off with $25 an hour as your base rate that you would be making. But the true operating cost, if this were for working up to 40 hours a week for a full year, the true hourly rate that you need to be charging people would be up to $34 an hour. That's very valuable for you to know because not only are you paying yourself, but you're also covering all of the other expenses that we have just covered. Using this spreadsheet, you can adequately plan for all of that once you know how much your true hourly rate will be. And of course, every budget needs to have, projections, right? How do you anticipate making that money? So, one way that you could do it is by being a teaching artist, right? And if you know what your hourly rate needs to be to cover your expenses, here it automatically populates that true hourly rate based off of this cell right here. So now you'll know you need to earn at least $34 an hour. And if you're going to be including teaching artist services as part of your business, then here you can say, you're going to work like 20 hours a week, getting paid $34 an hour. And voila, that's how much you would be making in a week, right? Um, and so again, you can manipulate all of these things here to help you figure out, how much should you be charging if you're going to be commissioned, if you're going to be selling books or fine art or photo prints. You can set what your average price will be for the individual item. And then here you can play around with how many of those items, average priced items or average transactions you would need to do in order to cover all of those expenses.
Wow.
This includes even like merchandise. So let's say, your average merchandise is going to be like $8. There you put in the eight, and here, if your average merchandise is $8, and on average, by going to different festivals and zine events and all of that, you're going to maybe sell like about 50 in a year. It gives you about $400, right? So this is where you can begin really playing around with just again how much you need to earn in order to cover this final total annual budget. Now, this might look like a large number, and granted, it is a large number, but you also have the opportunity as an artist, as a working artist, to apply to things like fellowships or grants. Um, and a couple of years ago, the state of California started offering their individual artist fellowship again. At the local level, the city of LA has a couple of different programs for artists. And one of them in particular offers up to $10,000 if you are selected to be one of the city of LA's like master artists. And not only do you get to, get paid for creating a project, but also, the ability to present it for free using one of the gallery spaces that the city of LA owns. So here you can start plugging in different types of grants that you could potentially get. Maybe it doesn't have to be a state grant, but here you could, change the federal grant to be like, say, a foundation. Um, like the Awesome Foundation, which gives up to $5,000. All right, so here you can input $5,000. Let's say you get two of those in over the course of a year, and voila, you've already started to build your finances to get a project started. So all of these things will help you set goals for yourself. It'll help you start planning for really this career that all of you are embarking on. And I don't know if you remember, but I did say, right, that these are linked right here to the other sheets. So if you know that a project is going to cost you a little bit of money to get going, you can go to these particular sheets here, right? These expense projections, and you can begin inputting whatever supplies you might need. As a sample, I provided this one, and this one, if we look at it, it's for merchandise development, including 2 books and related print-based material. So stickers, pins, and art prints. And the goal behind creating this specific project is to develop a variety of print based merchandise at various price ranges. Now, some of the things that I figured we would need as visual artists working in print based medium, I was, going through my mind and thinking about all the things that I have personally spent when working in paintings and other two D media. I was thinking, well, I've used printer inks, right, for my inkjet printer, and yeah, ink and printing is expensive, and at least for the printers that I have, it's at least $100 for the full set of inkjet cartridges, right? And I've had to probably spend it about 10 times in a year. So here again, this automatically populates. Let's say I have a slower year and I change it to 5. As you can see there, again, it automatically changes it. Now, this is a sample version, and these, the one labeled 1, 2, and 3, these you can actually use in this template and they will be reflected here, right? So if I make a change, let's say here, and let's say we're starting with a $12 sketchbook, right? And throughout the course of the year, I use 5. That's $60, you'll notice. And then come down here, there's the total for the supplies. And let's say I'm going to be printing a chapbook. Each chapbook is about $4.50 to print. And I'm doing a limited run of 250 chapbooks that I'm printing. There you see, we have $1,125. Our total supplies and printing projection, that 1185, if we go back over here, do you see what happened? 1185. So this template, like I said, is for you to work on. It's for you to modify as you need. And let's say by accident, you, I don't know, delete one of the formulas, go back to the full annual projection section here and scroll down. Here are the formulas. So you can fix the spreadsheet in the, case that you maybe accidentally erase one of those sections and you're unable to undo it. Or let's say you need to add some cells. You can always add cells and you can input the formula spreadsheet again. The way that I tried my best to make this simple and straightforward for you to be able to kind of understand how these functions work. Um, but those of you that are in the program and you have access to this, you can obviously reach out to me directly and I can help you if you get a little confused because Excel can be kind of confusing sometimes. So, does anyone have any questions? No, I just covered a lot and a lot of it was math related, but don't let that scare you.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Um, have you come across any numbers? I bet you have of statistically how many uh, uh,
Mhm.
different cultures of people, non-dominant groups in your communities have access to starting their business?
Mm.
Because embedded in the plans for everything is the ability to one act, granted funds.
Mhm.
And I'm just not sure for some people, they might have, like a retired person or something, or somebody who's doing well in their work right now, funds put aside so that they can use it to have these experiences to build their life and do things that they want to do,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But for a lot of our community, I'm wondering, um, how does that break down to even affecting us even trying for something like this? If we don't
Yeah.
have money in our back pocket, how overwhelming is this to think that you can really do something like this? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I think I understand the question. And I guess, I mean, statistically speaking, people of color, those of us in the room now in this session,
Yeah.
we have not had, historically access to the funding to get started, especially as artists. I mean, as it is already, we as people of color, especially of a particular generation, removed from our countries of origin, we oftentimes don't even have that like sort of encouragement, right, from within our community to be artists. But the truth is that art is everywhere and it is in every single thing that we interact with. And it is possible, especially if you changed your mindset and you approach this as a business owner, it's very possible for you to gain access to funding through the Small Business Administration. Here in LA, there's at least four small business administration centers that I'm aware of. One of them in particular, the one in Koreatown, that's where I went and actually developed the business plan for free with free help from professionals for DSTL Arts. And
Ah,
the public council, there's an organization called Public Counsel here in LA that also provides free legal services for helping people incorporate businesses and specifically nonprofits. And that's
wow.
how I started Distill Arts.
What was
So,
the name of it again?
Public Counsel,
Okay.
yeah. So we got a pro bono lawyer through through that service. And
Wow.
again, yeah, on 6th Street. Exactly. Thank you, Neville. And they do a lot of other services too. That's not just for starting businesses. But one of the things that has been kind of, I guess, fortunate in a sense is that there has been a huge push in diversity, equity, and inclusion, across a lot of different fields. And one of those things has resulted in more programs that are specifically for Latinos and people who are of African American and also of Asian descent, who can access funding in a little bit of an easier way with less barriers and less need for collateral. But
Ah,
again, this is where planning really, really is important and is going to benefit you in the long run because the earlier you can start thinking about who your audience is, what type of project you want to offer, and if you're going to go the full incorporated business route, these are ways in which you can begin accessing other lines of credit, small business loans,
right.
and things that can actually be like, forgiven, loans that can be forgiven in the future. So
It's good to know.
accessibility is there. Um, Awareness is maybe not quite there. And that's where I really hope that, those of you that are in this program now are going to, I hope, take advantage of some of the resources that we share,
Right.
through our platform. Um, you don't even have to be incorporated necessarily. You can still create artist projects through grants. You can create them through fellowships. There are certain types of jobs that come up periodically that are considered fellowships, but you're doing a service for the community while at the same time funding your projects, and getting space to work on a project. So there's a variety of ways in which you can make this happen if it's really truly the career path that you want to take.
Yeah.
Yeah. But excellent question, Miss Susie. I appreciate that.
Great answer. Great answer. Yeah.
Thank you. Um, And again, all of you that are in the program, you have us as resources. I've done this now for 12 years, technically longer, because I spent almost a year and a half before Distill Arts even was started in 2012. Like in around 2010 is when I started the business planning part of this. So, a lot of time and effort went into this, and a lot of research went into this. So I can definitely be a resource for all of you.
Yeah.
And I am available if you have any questions. And for people on our live stream who watch later, reach out. I'm definitely available to answer questions, whether that be in the chats, in the comments section on YouTube, whatever the case might be. Sooner or later, you'll get your answer. So we'll continue on. We're getting pretty close to the end here of the presentation. And if any of you do have any questions later, you're always welcome to, again, add them to the chat, or, we'll have another office hours session where you can come in and ask questions live as well. But on the topic of startup funding, sometimes startup funding can also come from things like crowd-funded sources. So there's, some of the more famous ones that people are aware of, Kickstarter as an example, Indiegogo is maybe a little less known than things like GoFundMe. But the one that you'll probably, especially if you're on YouTube a lot, you'll hear about the most is Patreon. And all of these have different ways in which you can engage with your community and also get funding to get a project started. The thing about each one of them is that it's really useful to understand that they do take their cut. That each one of them will charge you fees for hosting any kind of like giving campaign. And each one of them has maybe a different way in which they offer payouts. So to make it just slightly easier for you, we did create a little graph here that kind of shows you more or less some of the key points that you need to know. Patreon, again, is the best one for creatives with an audience. If you're still building an audience, this is still a good way for you to get some funding to get your project started. It's a recurring subscription based system, which means that every month people pay into your projects, right? There is, again, some fees that you need to be aware of, but there's also other useful tools that can help you, such as a dedicated app to managing your user's experience, right? Your donor's experience. There's a reward system that you can set up so that for a certain level of giving, people are automatically either given access to something, or it sends you a reminder to send them the gift that they have essentially paid for in exchange for supporting your particular project or program that you're developing. And then of course, there's a lot of other integrations that can work with, like, say, your website, your YouTube channel, whatever the case might be. Kickstarter and Indiegogo tend to be, and even GoFundMe to a certain degree, tend to be for like one-time projects. They're not really for ongoing things, but they're also useful, right, to get a little bit of funding to get your projects going. And then GoFundMe is probably best known for helping people fundraise for social causes. Um, Sometimes you'll see that it's for helping people pay, like, say, funeral expenses or medical expenses. But it's also a way to get funding for, say, a workshop series or a documentary that you're trying to create, or maybe a podcast that's highlighting some element of the community that um, you know isn't usually highlighted. So each one does have its purpose. Each one does have its own kind of audience, and they're all useful in one capacity or another. So don't feel like you have to go with the full business incorporation route like we were talking about. These are still very, very solid and very valuable tools for you to get your careers going as working independent artists. And again, it's really valuable to remember that crowdfunding campaigns that are successful are very well seen campaigns. So just like we talked about before, you have to promote yourself. You have to be comfortable with promoting yourself. Social media is a tool. It doesn't have to be something that you're on all the time, but it is a great way for you to, leverage your following, right? Use social media to get more people to follow your projects, have those human connections that we talked about. Again, quality relevant content has to be created by humans. It's not something that an algorithm will automatically recognize. But by creating interactions and moments where you can interact with your audience, those are going to be the things that will get you ultimately the funding that you need to get started. It's also useful to consider other marketing platforms. We gave the example of Growth Turbine or MailChimp. Both of those, I believe, are free. I know MailChimp for sure is free. I haven't checked on Growth Turbine in a while, but I do remember when we were researching this, that was one that came up that was free to use, free to start. Um, Again, any kind of social media platform can help. And they can also help with things like evaluation. Remember, good planning also includes the post planning, right? The post evaluation stuff. So from beginning to end, you can always ask yourself the question, what went right and where can I improve? That's something that will, I think, really serve each one of you because it's a way for you to, again, reflect on the things that you've learned and you level up your experience and ultimately find little hacks that work for you by asking, where can I improve? And one way in which you can do that at the beginning and middle and end is by maintaining a schedule, right? Just like we talked about before. Don't treat it like a side hustle, don't treat it like a hobby. Take it serious, maintain a schedule, be consistent. It will keep you motivated and it'll keep you working towards whatever goals you set for yourself. And again, benchmarks will build always on previous accomplishments, especially if you're, meeting them in a way that feels authentic and real for you. Marketing and promotion, that is obviously a way to always evaluate, when you post something if it gets a certain amount of views or a certain amount of likes, you'll be able to tell, okay, this is the type of content that is working for my group, for my audience. So I'm going to continue creating content like that. And I'll continue to, modify and adjust as needed. There's other things like Google Analytics, which you can also use. You can plug that into a website to see if people are actually visiting your website. You can also use Google Analytics when creating newsletters, and that can help you see who is clicking on links that are built into your newsletter. If it's a email-based newsletter, so there's a lot of different little tools that you can use through just simply marketing and promotion. Also, think of things like live streams and, surveys and even just comments on posts as a way for you to have conversations with people. You can easily have a conversation with a friend. You can text them, you can, maybe call them, see them on a regular basis. But the beauty of things like live streams and comments on posts is that they can come from a variety of places, from a variety of audience members that maybe you don't have immediate access to. And by having people who are commenting on posts, even if it is like a few days or a month later, like those are ways that you can start to really see how your work impacts others. And then if your particular project involves things that are in person related, you can evaluate based on how many people actually turn up for your events, for your workshops. You can evaluate on how many copies of your chapbook were sold or downloaded if it was an ebook or viewed if it was a video. All of those things also help you make adjustments to, how you're presenting your work, where you're presenting your work, and maybe even why you're presenting your work. And then last but not least, I'll leave you with our contact info. This is for the people watching on any of the live streams or watching the video later. We are available here as a resource for you. And of course, those of you in the program, we have been doing this for a long time. I'm sure, I can really only speak for myself in terms of how long I've been practicing as an artist. as an independent artist. And I'm sure Abraham has been practicing for a while too, and has learned some tricks and techniques to getting his work in front of other people. Because it's a hustle. We're always hustling, and we are genuinely here to not only help you learn from us, but even to learn from you. Each one of you, like I said before, has your own unique set of experiences, your own unique way of viewing things, and that is the advantage that you bring to not just your own business, but even to Distill Arts. We are here for you because of you. So, I just want to encourage you to continue the dialogue, whether that be on our Google Class, or, in one of the office hours sessions, or however the conversation may go. But again, we're here for you, and we hope to just be that support that you feel you're looking for. And Carolyn has a question on resumes. What's a good format and or place to share from? Um, you know, Resumes, that's actually what one of my backgrounds is in terms of the nonprofit world. There's at least three different types of resumes that when we're talking about resumes specifically, you could potentially choose from as an artist. The artist resume, if you're talking about more like the curriculum vitae, that's something that you could probably put either up on your website in terms of sharing it or on things like LinkedIn. Um, if you're talking about a portfolio, that's slightly different and presented differently, and that's definitely more like a website. That's probably going to be the best way to present your resume. There's also like pitch decks that you can create if you want to send them off to people that can function as a resume, while also helping you obviously market your skills as an artist. Um, you can definitely link photos, but my recommendation for you would be more along the lines of like the portfolio process where you are maybe doing specific sets of photos as opposed to individual photos. So yeah, there's probably more a little bit more of an involved process as a photographer for like submitting a resume for something. Um, for those of you that are writers and would want to look at more of a writer's resume, um, I could definitely create a separate lesson that could work for teaching resume writing specifically. Um, I can actually present to you an example of a. Let me see if I can pull it up quickly here. So this is my portfolio, and I hope you can see it okay. This was something that I actually created very recently. I created it for a competition, and it's just simply starting off right here, kind of like as a deck that shows, again, who am I, right? I give a little bit of a background on myself. This is my artist statement, which is usually unique to an artist's portfolio or a pitch deck. So an artist's statement is going to be something that you would likely have not only in a pitch deck, but also on your website, something that kind of describes your mission and your vision for your artwork. Um, and then, of course, selected works. So in this particular case, I selected one of my own photo zines that I did many, many years ago. Um, a handmade, perfect bound little zine, with some selected images from it. So this is how, generally speaking, I would recommend you craft a visual arts portfolio. So this isn't just for photographers, but for visual artists. Yeah, if you have other skills to add to your portfolio, you could probably do it how I did it here, in the sense of, I gave some background on the workshop series, remembering the riots, and then I'm presenting here the final product, the plus some images of the actual workshops themselves. and then some photos that I included, plus a photo of me during the release party. So this could be a potential approach that you take to the
I don't think so.
to building your portfolio.
Right.
But yeah, Abraham gives some good advice there in the chat as well. Always think about who and for what it's for, because you may need to modify your particular portfolio or your resume based on what end, what purpose it's going to be used for. So I hope that helps. We can definitely talk more about that too. Um, if all of you feel like it's valuable to you, I will definitely create another seminar where we can discuss portfolios and resumes. Any final questions? Thank you for the feedback, Carolyn. I appreciate that too. Like I said, we're here to learn from you too. We want to always be sure to, obviously be serving you. So, well, if there are no more questions, yes, I can't wait for your future selves as well. Um, I'm definitely looking forward to the continued growth here. Um, So yeah, I think with that we'll go ahead and call it a night. I appreciate all of you for sitting through the math portion of this. I know it was a lot. And again, we will have at the end of actually this time at the end of November, we'll have another office hours session where we'll review any questions that you have related to tonight's seminar. It'll be a good opportunity for all of you to maybe practice creating your budget. There's no like real homework for you tonight, but if I were to give you any kind of homework, I would say review that sample budget that I provided you. That template is there for you to use, and I will again, make myself available to answer any kind of questions when it comes to filling it out and developing your particular, artist budget, artist project budget. And again, thank you all for the Halloween wishes. Sorry, the birthday and the Halloween wishes in the chat. I appreciate that. I hope you all enjoy your Halloween tomorrow as well. Um, and yeah, we'll see y'all next week. Have a good one, y'all. Take care.
Bye. Save me some candy.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.